Welcome to day 9. 9 days in already, 9 days of podcasting. Every single day at 6 a.m. I've released a podcast on a specific topic or kind of multiple topics kind of bolstered into one. And today's topic is one that I guess we scratched the surface on, but I thought it deserves its own episode. Now, this isn't going to be for everyone, but as you can see from the title, this is how to handle social pressure without feeling like you're losing yourself through the festive period. Most people have time off this time of year, as we spoke about on one of the previous episodes, and with that time off comes maybe not necessarily challenges, but opportunities to go out and sort of do more drinking, more food, and with more drinking and with more food comes its challenges with your own kind of beliefs around what you value, your fitness, your goals, and all these sort of things. And this is where, right back to the first episode where we spoke about the fuck it mentality, there's a lot of common themes here. But specifically in today's episode, I want to talk about how to handle these social pressures, because if you're like me, and I think most people tend to have this trait of being a people pleaser. Not a people pleaser that you bend over backwards for everyone, although some of you guys may do that, but not necessarily standing up to your own goals and your habits that you've laid out to do because your friends maybe poke a bit of fun and you end up giving in to the things that you don't necessarily want to do sometimes. So let's talk about it. And over the festive period, you kind of know what it's like, right? I think we can all be guilty of it ourselves. But equally, if this episode is resonating with you more, you tend to fall on the other side of this conversation where it's your mate and it's like, come on, have one more. Oh, you only eating that much? Or you already going up for seconds? Like, there's a lot of challenges, as I said, around the conversations or the comments that people can make. And as I said before, I don't think it's intentionally. I think it's just how some people are hardwired. And usually this says more about them than yourselves, but we take a lot of defense from it and it's like we end up in the back foot. So usually someone will mention something around eating or drinking or not eating and not drinking as if it's their business, and it's not their business. It can be really exhausting and it can be quite taxing. And some of you guys have just built up this resilience towards that conversation and just managed to brush it off, but you've never truly deeply kind of addressed the situation. Because you haven't, you're letting your friends and loved ones get away with kind of pushing their own insecurities onto you. And that's why I wanted to do an episode on this. Now, I don't think this episode is going to be particularly long, but there's a couple of kind of strategies of things on just how you reframe that conversation that might work for you. So let's start to unpack that on how to handle these situations so that you can actually truly enjoy the festive period without any regrets, no awkwardness, and more importantly, no guilt. Right, so let's start with the first part I wrote down here is that you need to understand it is your life and no one else's. I don't care how close a relationship you're in or what it is, but it's your life. Now, of course, when you've got families, when you've got kids and you're your own little unit, you obviously need to communicate to your partner and work as a team, but you need to do that together. You both need to hear each other's opinion. But even with that being said, you're not obliged to justify your choices to anyone. Now, that doesn't mean like you be completely selfish and it's like, nah, you can look after the kids, I'm away out to have a drink. It's like, it's more so like in the situations where you feel pressured to do something that you're not. And this can be a hard conversation to have in partner dynamics. I know both myself and Gillian, not that we've had any challenges with having those conversations, but it can be quite awkward in the sense of what we're trying to do, whether we want to do something or we don't. And this has been a great thing as to why we work so well and have been together for just over 11, 12 years now, that at the start, though, we sort of done these things to please the other person, and now we have found our balance on some things that we're like, you know what, I'm going to miss out on that because I really don't enjoy doing that, and vice versa. So we sort of know how each other works. But equally, what I would say in that scenario, right, because this is, I guess this more falls on you guys that are in long-term relationships. And I ain't any guru whatsoever here, right? I have my own fuck-ups as we all do. But one thing that I've personally recognised, that although sometimes I can't be bothered going out and doing some things and I'd rather sit in the house, you also need to know what your partner what their values are, and if they really appreciate doing something, or doing something with friends and doing something with family, and want to include you in that, then you need to recognise what is the part that you can play in that. Can you show up for a couple of hours? Can you make do? Because there is some sacrifices that need to be made both ways. And this is more in a partner dynamic, right? And for the rest of this episode, I'm going to talk more about your solo ventures, when it's you and your friends. You and your friends, the dynamic's a little bit more different. However, the same principle still applies. And we'll talk more about that when it comes to the meeting up with friends, and maybe if you are trying to change the path that you're on when it comes to your health, and you recognise that a big part of one of the reasons that your fitness and health is maybe deteriorating, and drinking has a part to play with it, then look, maybe you need to have some conversations on how you change up the environment that you end up meeting up with your friends, because you can't, you simply don't want to handle putting a poison in your body. And look, that's your own choices, and this is why this can be a hard, selfish but also selfless thing to do. And it's finding the balance, man. It's really tricky and challenging to do. I'm not going to say that I've got it perfect. I'm still finding this challenge with my friend dynamic group, or the dynamic of friendships that I have. And look, some friendships have just had to be cut. It's just one of those unfortunate things, and it can be a sad thing, but I'm no longer in mourning with that sort of stuff. I sort of made peace and thought to myself, well, although I did value some of these friendships that I did have, what's more important to me is my own health and my own wellness and my own fitness and my own relationships I want to build with the people that I've got in my life. And although some of those people, it would have been nice for them to stick around and have that close relationship, the sort of where I'm going in life, they don't want to be a part of, or they can't be a part of for their own reasons. And I can't control their reasons, but I can control mine. And that's the important thing you need to take away, that it is your life, and the only thing you can have control over is how you react in the decisions that you make. You can't control anyone else's decisions. People are going to say some stupid shit to you. People are going to make judgment. They're going to shed some light on things that maybe get your back up, but how you react and how you can control your emotions and what you do going forward is the only thing you can do, right? So don't waste energy on the negative side of those things. Be positive and sort of shrug it off in a sense. Now, what we need to address here, though, is that you don't owe anyone an explanation. It's the whole, oh no, I can't do that because I've got a PT session in the morning. No, I can't do that because I've got a run in the morning. Now, you can do whatever you want. You don't need to explain to anyone why you're choosing not to drink, or why you're choosing not to have dessert, or why you're choosing to miss on the starter, or whatever it is that you're doing. But ultimately, the holidays, or the festive period, the time that you take off work, isn't necessarily about that meal. It's not necessarily about the drinks. It's the connection, okay? And all that sort of stuff gets mixed in with that. So you can enjoy yourself without a drink. You might think that you can't, and this will take practice. It might feel really awkward to start with, but ultimately it's your goals, your body, and your business, right? So it's down to you. It's no one else to make judgment or give you advice on. Like, now, with that being said, you might want to hear some of the feedback that some of your friends are giving you. If you find that when you don't drink, you're quite a miserable person to be around, and that might be a harsh truth or a hard pill to swallow, that might be something you need to work on. But none of that's going to come out when you are over these next week, right? It's a 1 week out of the 52 weeks that you experience, and just because you want to drink a little less or eat or not eat food in a particular place because you don't like the way you feel the next day, then that's not going to create this big uproar in the dynamic of things that's going on. Now, what I would say is that you really need to recognise here, this can be a hard truth. If someone's trying to pressure you into doing something that doesn't necessarily align with your goals or your values or something that you're trying to pursue, then that's on them. That's not necessarily you. But we take that burden on, don't we? The people pleaser within us. Like, we start to feel guilty because we're not meeting up with them or working to their standards. And someone that's done this really, really well, I guess it's just because she's my wife after all, is Jill. Like, Jill wanted to stop drinking. She's not, I don't know if she's like completely going to be off it, but speaking to her recently, I don't think she's ever got a plan for when she'll have a drink again. Maybe at her best friend's wedding or something like that, she can maybe see herself raising a glass, but she's broken through that barrier, and it's been quite challenging, I think, for her. But she's now at a stage where she's really enjoyed herself going out and meeting her friends, and although her friends have had drinks, she's chosen not to, and she's still managed to show up in those social situations and done these other things, which is great. It's a really, that one part there, the whole drinking side of things, is the biggest challenge that most of you guys will face over these next couple of weeks, and maybe as you go into 2025. And this is why this episode is important here, because this is something that's maybe not everyone, but it's something that we all think about over these next couple of weeks, and it sort of dies off, and we just sort of get caught up in the whirlwind as we go into 2025. But as I said, I think this is going to be a big thing that many more people try and do, where they don't want to drink, or they don't want to have situations where it's just about drinking, and they want to show up to some of these things maybe without the alcoholic drink, and see how they respond, and find other activities, find other things that they want to do. And this is a big part of why I think High Rocks is so successful, is because it's something else to focus on. Again, park runs, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, they're all great because it's another goal that you can do with your friends. So what's really behind the social pressure then? Well, it's, as I said, it's usually people projecting their own insecurities. When someone says that, come on, just have another drink, really, it can be another way of saying, like, it feels better if it feels better for me when I'm drinking if you're also drinking. Or there's a part of it that it might just generally be they feel better when you're drunk and they're drunk, because there's nothing worse. I don't think the drunk person necessarily cares, but when you're sober and someone is absolutely out their face, they are horrible conversations. It's usually the same conversation over and over and over again, and they can be quite hard to like stand up to. But ultimately, if that's what they want to do, then cool. The other part is the whole "you're no fun." And that's a myth, right? Just because you say no to a drink does not make you boring. It just makes you more intentional with the decisions and choices that you're trying to make. Now, with that being said, I've seen many people who choose not to drink, and they do become boring because they don't engage in conversation. They don't try. You need to try. You need to be there. You can't just sit there with your face tripping. You show up a little bit more and care, like still be involved in the conversations. Feels awkward at first, but it's very easy, or very quickly you can overcome that hurdle. And that all kind of circles back to confidence. Confidence is really the key as to why people drink. They call it, I like to loosen up. But loosening up is basically just confidence to do the things that comes into your mind. So when there's music on, like, and you like a song, you're singing it, right? You're blasting it out. Now, for a lot of people, they would never do that in a setting where they're just sat down with their mates at Starbucks. However, like, the only difference here is alcohol. And it's not that it's more accepted just because everyone else is drinking. It's more the confidence in your mind of not caring as much, right? So just remember that. It's confidence is a skill that you want to work on, and these are great opportunities to work on that skill. Confidence is a choice, and it becomes its own vibe, right? And that's what you need to remember, because really in these situations, what gets laughs out of people is just the banter and the confidence to be able to execute a joke or whatever it is that you're doing. That starts with confidence, not necessarily the drink or the relaxation that comes along with alcohol. So how do you navigate social situations with confidence? What do you do? Well, first things first is you kind of need to stick with some sort of baseline, some sort of metric, some sort of non-negotiable when going into an event. And the event might be, well, let's be honest, the two hindrance here is going to be food, more calories, and alcohol, more drinks. So we need to set some boundaries or some non-negotiables around that. So how much are you going to have to eat? What is it you're going to drink? How many drinks is it going to be? Have an idea of what that looks like, because then when you go into those situations, it's going to give you a line, and that line you can decide whether you're going to stick to it. And as the pressure starts, it's like, no, this is what I'm doing. And that again is like what we spoke about in one of the other episodes. I can't remember which one it was, but ultimately we were saying that it builds a layer like this, just a little micro layer in your brain of resilience. A bit of adversity that you faced, a bit of challenge, but you stuck to it. You said you were going to do something and you stuck to it. And even when the pressure starts, it just becomes easier to stick to it, because if it's like an open, I'm just going to have a few drinks, as I said before, like, is a few 7. But if you've got a number, hard number, when you've approached that number, it's like, right, cool, I'm done. Because the reason I was setting that back to one of the previous episodes, you've got a strong why. You don't want to feel the way that you've been feeling. The depression, anxiety and fear that you feel around drinking alcohol isn't fucking worth it. So why do you keep doing it to yourselves? Let's make sure we stick, or try our best to stick and adhere to that line as best as possible. Okay, next one, along the lines of building confidence in these social settings, or confidence in saying no, is really the power of saying no. Like, without being awkward, may I add here, right? So there has to be some sort of like firmness, but also polite at the same time. So someone says, I'm gonna have a couple. I'm only having, so ahead of time you're messaging friends, right? I'm only having a few tonight. I'm just gonna stick with 2 drinks. You buy first round and second round or whatever it is, and then you're going, oh come on, have another drink. No, fuck off. It's like, whoa. Now, don't get me wrong. There might be times that you have to be very firm in that sense, but a simple, no, I'm all good, thanks. That'll be suffice. Now, if you start saying things like, look, I can't do that because of this. Like, this is where the excuses are starting to creep in. And if you're making it an excuse just to hide the fact that you don't want to do it, because that is it. That for some people, that is a bit of your own insecurity starting to come out, because you feel that you're going to disappoint others with it, and that's the people pleaser within you. But because you're communicating in that way, people see through it, and they think that they can then, it's a good thing that they can then twist your arm to drink more or eat more. And again, I don't think it is intentional, but it's their insecurity, because they feel better if you're eating, or they feel better if you're drinking. The eating one's a bit of a mad one. For you guys that are in relationships, how many times does your partner say to you, oh, do you want to go here? And you're like, yeah, well, let's go. Like, we'll take you there. It's like, oh, what are you getting? It's like, nah, I don't want anything. Oh, I won't get anything then. It's like, come on to fuck, man. If you want something, just have it. So you find yourself ordering just because they feel awkward not ordering. Like, it's so weird how we can't just be our own people, and especially around food and alcohol. That's really the 2 things that this comes down to. So a polite but firm response. It's like, no thanks, that looks amazing, I'm full. Like, that is a response. And you need to notice how these responses don't invite a debate, right? They're not up for grabs, and you're shutting down the conversation in a nice way. You're not saying these open-ended, debatable, like, oh, there's maybe a chance they could drink. Especially if you're looking at it, you're like, nah, I shouldn't. Like, that's just opening a can of worms for yourself, for your friends, to just twist that arm for you to have the thing that you don't want, because you've left it open-ended. Now, also remember, like, why are you saying no to some of these things? I said that earlier, or on one of the previous episodes, 2 episodes ago. Your strong why as to why you're doing things is one of the reasons, is what you need to keep reminding yourself for. So it's not that you can't, it's like, it's the opposite. It's you don't want to. Maybe not the opposite, but the reframing of your mind that this is how you build confidence, and this is also how you build discipline in some of these situations. Now, is the next 2 weeks the time to say no to more calories and no to more drink? Who knows? It might be for some of you. It might not be for others. But the whole point of this episode is to understand that with social pressure, that plays a massive factor in why you keep falling back on your word. And the more you fall back on your word, the less confident you are in these situations. And then you just give up completely. And this plays into the all or nothing mentality as well. So this is where it might be good that as you go into the new year, that you start building some boundaries around your nights out. Okay, another strategy that works here, especially when building confidence and the response that you have to people, is redirecting the conversation. So, no thanks, but tell me about it was one that came up. So people love talking about themselves, right? Redirect the spotlight, because most likely they'll forget about you drinking for a short period of time anyway. So someone might ask why you're drinking, and that might be why you're not drinking, and that might be a hard conversation for you to have with your friends if it's out the blue. So as I said, you don't necessarily need to justify it for them. So just change it up. Just say, just don't want to drink tonight. Tell me something about XYZ, whatever's happening in their life. And you'll be surprised at how well that works. see, especially since starting a podcast and doing interviews, it's been a great skill that I've gained. Like, being truly curious in someone else's life. Like, I've noticed that when someone's even asking questions about me and I say something that maybe triggers something in their mind, they love to tell me about what they've done in that situation. And it's like, this is quite interesting. So it's very, very intriguing to watch the human behaviour around this. And this one works more often than you'd think. Right, so on one of the previous episodes, the whole like going round to someone's house and everyone bringing a dish or bringing a drink or whatever, bring something that you can enjoy. That is probably a good little strategy where I also I can't remember which episode I mentioned that in, but I mentioned about bringing the healthy dish or bringing the thing that aligns with your goals and your values. So the protein dense dish or whatever it is, because we all know there's going to be other choices there that's going to be very easy to overconsume or overdrink. So at least that way, you know there's one thing that you can enjoy guilt-free. Now, you should be able to enjoy everything guilt-free, but the sad reality is you don't, and you haven't built those practices or behaviours up yet. So having something there that gives you that one little win, that one little tick in your brain, subconsciously to go, no, I feel good because I at least had that, then cool. That is a stepping stone onto better behaviours, onto better habits that you can then build in the new year. Okay, last 2 points here. In this one, we're getting deep, right? We're going to get you right in the feels. I want you to ask yourself, what's the real point of this event? What is the real point of the meeting? If it's a friendship or a family thing, like why are you there? Why are you there? Now, as you're thinking about that, keep asking why. Ask it 5 times. There's a rule, I remember this from my corporate days. The 5 whys. Ask why, then ask why again, and why again. Like a little kid, they always ask why, because you're going to get to a good answer, this deeply emotional answer, most likely. And the chances are it's going to be around spending time with people, not how many pigs in blankets you have or how many Christmas cocktails you have or how many drinks you had. It's going to be about the time spent. Now that you know that, you realise that it's not about the food, it's not about the drinks, it's about the connection and time spent. Now, the drinks and the food, they have their part to play. It's all part of the experience. But overindulging in those things doesn't help with that experience. And underindulging in those things or missing those things don't help with that either, right? You need to find your balance on what that looks like. So having a rule, not a rule, sorry, like this is so hard to have these conversations to a wide blanket audience. There's another pun, pigs in blankets, wide blanket. Is that a pun? No, I don't think it is. But anyway, so it's so hard to be very generalised with the advice that I give because individually we're going to all have our own experience with this. And people having rules can sometimes then be triggers where they then overindulge and it becomes like a too restrictive. The last thing you want to have is too restrictive of these rules and settings, but ultimately bring it back to that why. Why is it you want to do this? Because you want to feel better in yourselves most of the time. So this is the reminder as to why you're doing it. So, as I said, it's not the food, it's not the drinks, it's the connections and the experience that you're making. So that's what you need to remind yourself of. And when you're there, like, have fun, like, let your hair down a little bit. Like, it might be a few drinks need to get you there, or does it? Like, it doesn't really matter, but the confidence is what you're trying to gain from those experiences of showing up. If you're always showing up and you need to, it's a bit of harsh reality, and sadly there's a few relationships that is out there where the only time you guys can have fun is when you have a drink in you. It's not necessarily, I guess it is sad, but ultimately there's something being masked there. Like, why are you guys so uptight and you need an alcoholic drink to loosen the reins and have fun? Who knows? I couldn't tell you because mine and Jillian's relationship has never been like that. There's maybe the first couple of dates that we had where we had to be a wee bit drunk to speak to, well, more so Jillian, she only said fucking 5 words to us, where we were speaking to each other more, but as we grew stronger in our relationship, we generally just showed more interest in each other's lives and what we wanted from life. Okay, one of the last points I'll say in here is, what do you do if you try all these things? You've said no, you have a kind of a target that you stick to, you're focusing on experience, but you still find that you overindulge. Well, doing it once or even a handful of times, it doesn't matter that much. Even if you do it over these next 2 weeks, it doesn't necessarily mess everything up. You can create some you wouldn't even create bad habits. It's maybe you're just falling into old ways. You're not going to feel good from it, right? But ultimately, the end goal, it doesn't end there. It's what you do consistently is really what matters. And this is why I'm doing these episodes, is to give you a different way of thinking of these next couple of weeks. Some days you might win and you nail all these things. You're like, man, that was really good. And then the next day you're like, oh, I miss that feeling of having a drink, so I'll full send it. Then you hit the hangover and you're like, oh, fuck, man, I didn't really enjoy that. So you then have another layer of opportunity and experience to then apply to the next time that you go out. So if you have an extra slice of cake or you have an extra meal or more pigs in blankets, then enjoy it. Just enjoy it guilt-free and have no shame with it, because there's always going to be a tomorrow. But if you're always relying on the tomorrow, the next day, the next new year, understand and recognise the behaviours and patterns that are coming to play here. How many times are you going to say tomorrow? So use the layer of experience. Be aware of why you've done it. Why did you have the drink? Whether it's justified or not, like who's to say whether you should have one or not, but ultimately bring it back to those goals, and the why is why you're starting. The why is the why you're starting. That's a hard one to say. Right, I did write down specific scenarios here, or think about specific scenarios, and there's only one that comes to mind, and that is the person or the family member who just doesn't get it. They don't understand fitness or why you're working on your health, because to them in their era that they grew up, food and drink is the go-to method of a good time, right? That's what's closely associated with them. And look, that's their thing. Let them do their thing. So sometimes it's your closest family and friends who are going to give you the hardest time. It's just the harsh reality of it. But as I said earlier, they don't mean any harm, and I don't think it's their intentions to do that either. The best advice I can get for you is just focus on the connection, not necessarily the conflict. And if it's easier to just go with the flow in some moments, then go with it. But you just know that you don't necessarily need their approval to make the choices that align with your goals, right? You don't need their pat in the back or their essentially their approval that you need to, whether you have something or not, or whether you choose to not have extra food or have a drink when you're with them. And I already mentioned the other scenario, which is the person who's very persistent. They're always like, come on, just have a drink. Just know, like a hyperactive dog, if you guys have had a dog, when they're in the puppy stage, they're jumping all over the place when you've got them in a leash and you're walking and they're jumping all over the place, they'll tire themselves out. So there's only so many times that they're going to ask you, come on, just have a drink. Just be polite, smile. Honestly, I'm all good, thanks. So just keep repeating that sentence. They'll get tired, they'll tire themselves out, and you'll be able to move on with the night. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. That is I don't know what I'm going to call this episode, but the overcoming the social pressures during the festive period. But the bottom line is here that these social situations are meant to be enjoyed, right? So you don't want to be so heated off the back of them. Stay calm, stay collected, and stay true to the goals that you want to live. If you feel that you're quite regimented throughout the year and this is the time where you're going to let your hair down a bit, then cool, let your hair down. But I think a lot of people think letting their hair down needs to be around alcohol, and it doesn't. There is many different ways that you can do that, and some food for thought, no pun intended there, might be doing a specific activity, playing darts. Like I know, like Flight Club in Glasgow is something that I see a lot of guys doing. Axe throwing, again, pool, just going out a run, playing paddle. Like, do an activity, do a run, do a walk. It can just meet in Starbucks as opposed to a bar. Do your thing, do whatever means or do whatever is fun to you guys. And as I said, really the best thing here is just being intentional with your actions, setting boundaries where you can and sticking to those boundaries, because it's the confidence that you gain off the back of that is more powerful than the actual saying no to the drink alone, if that makes sense. So go out there, enjoy yourself, feel good about yourself, more importantly, and enjoy the festivities, because you have got this. That is a wrap for this week's episode. You know the drill here. If you haven't already, what the hell are you doing? Why have you not subscribed to YouTube yet? Why have you not left 5 stars on Spotify? Why haven't you taken your mum's phone and left a 5-star rating on Spotify as well? With that being said, we'll wrap up the episode. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another jam-packed episode.